Okay, now we're ready to start this first MENA Stakeholder Seminar that ILAC, the International Legal Assistance Consortium, is hosting. And I'm happy to see such a big crowd here. I'm also happy to see a mixed crowd here, because this is really one of the purposes of these seminars, to mix people. In this room we have people from different international organizations, rule of law experts, and we have from Tunisia lawyers, judges, and people from the Ministry of Justice. My name is Per Lagerström. I'm head of communication at ILAC, and this is, as I said, the first in a series of seminars within our MENA program. It's a 3-year program in the whole MENA region, and we're going to hold 2 of these kind of seminars annually, focusing on different themes, different topics throughout the years. And it's not a coincidence that the first one is here in Tunis and in Tunisia. This is sort of home turf for ILAC and for our implementing partners, Sealy Institute and IBA, who's since 2012 have been running several courses of training of Tunisian judges. So we are really working on the ground here in Tunisia. However, this seminar is not going to focus on what ILAC and our implementing member organizations are doing. The reason we have this seminar here is that the Tunisian experience is interesting. It's worth listening to, it's worth talking about, and it's worth learning from. That's why we have this theme for today, the Tunisian experience, from Ben Ali to democracy and rule of law. We're looking forward to a vivid discussion, both with you in the audience and the people watching us on the web. Apart from you here in this hall, we have people sitting in, at this Tunisian embassy in Stockholm. We have friends from ILAC representatives to Syria sitting in Gaziantep watching this. We have, I believe, the Tunisian embassy in Oslo watching this. We have different member organizations helping us broadcasting this on their web pages. A special thanks to Nordic African Institute, who is also bringing this to their crowd of people. And this really shows that there is an international interest, an international curiosity to follow the Tunisian experience in this transitional period of time. This seminar is divided into 2 separate panels. First, we have a panel with a Tunisian perspective on the Tunisian transition. That will be conducted by Mr. Christian Åhlund, Executive Director of ILAC, and I will soon give the floor to him. After that first panel and a session of Q&As from this knowledgeable audience, we will have a short coffee break. And then we will have a second panel with a more international focus on what can be learned, what can we learn from this, the Tunisian experience. So that's the format of the seminar. Once again, very much welcome. And now, with no further ado, I give the floor to Christian Åhlund, Executive Director of ILAC and my boss.
Thank you very much. Every year, in the context of the ILAC annual general meeting, we arrange a seminar with a context that is connected to ILAC's activities. This year, we have chosen Tunisia as the venue for our annual general meeting. And as the topic of the first panel during this seminar, we have chosen the Tunisian democratic and constitutional transition. 3 years ago, when the concept of the Arab Spring was born, this concept consisted of a whole group of countries. Over the years, this group has shrunk, and today the only remaining country is Tunisia. Many of us have been watching with admiration and fascination how Tunisia, despite serious difficulties, has been able to stay the course in your transition to democracy and the rule of law. In order to help us better understand this process, we have been able to put together for the first panel an outstanding group of people, of experts, who are very much part of this process. First and foremost, I would like to introduce to you Tunisia's Minister of Justice, Mr. Hafedh Ben Salah, who has agreed not only to be part of the panel, but also to officially open the seminar. So please, Mr. Minister, may I turn over the floor to you. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the International Legal Assistance Consortium, the IBA, and the Legal Institute for Central and Eastern Europe, and CEDA. I'm very pleased to proceed to the inauguration of this title, which is entitled From Ben Ali's Rule to Democracy and the Rule of Law. I seize this opportunity to convey my sincere expressions of thanks to the organizers of this important seminar for the strenuous efforts they invested in supporting the process of transition to democracy in the Republic of Tunisia by making their expertise available to the Tunisian authorities, especially the Ministry of Justice and Human Rights and Transitional Justice. Ladies and gentlemen, our seminar is held 3 years on after the great and profound mutations that this country underwent that targeted the nature of the despotic regime that used to reign in this country and which led to important changes towards democracy and the consolidation of the role of the civil society in a country that is respectful of human rights and in a country where human rights are being complied with and upheld. This process is the process that we are still pursuing with great pride. Indeed, we managed to achieve joint objectives for the Tunisian people, as expressed by the Tunisian people in the revolution, like the establishment of a new constitution in which the entire Tunisian society with its civil society organizations took part in the drafting of this constitution and for this constitutional and electoral process, and through the monitoring of the political process. The option and the alternative of national dialogue in all fields and all sectors as a mechanism to reach consensus and to come up with respectable, satisfactory and constructive solutions to the problems on the agenda. This in itself stands as a challenge that Tunisia managed to overcome with success in our own appraisal. As an example to that, and in the Ministry of Justice and Human Rights and Transition transitional justice. Dialogue has helped to set up a provisional body to oversee civilian justice in harmony and in keeping with international standards and in complete consecration for the independence of the judiciary. We also started the elaboration of some programs and workshops designed to reform the judiciary in association with our friends from international institutions and organizations like your honorable institution, ILAC. By the same token, important efforts have been exerted to comply with human rights, like the adoption of the law that instituted the establishment of the Anti-Torture National Committee and the adoption of the law for transitional justice, which created the Truth and Dignity Commission, which will have powers to seek truth and to hold those perpetrators for human rights violations accountable and to provide reparation for victims, in addition to providing all necessary provisions to prevent recurrence of any recurrence of dictatorship. We also set up the independent body for the oversight of the elections and the provisional body to monitor the constitutionality of laws. The success of Tunisia in elaborating the law for transitional justice and the establishment of a body that has a great deal of impartiality and independence and clarity and effectiveness bears witness to the best to the excellent option chosen by Tunisia in the transition to democracy and to cut away with the legacy of the past characterized by human rights, opting for now the reform of institutions. These examples that I've just mentioned, in addition to the other initiatives that are still in progress, we have obtained support for these initiatives from our partners, from brotherly and friendly countries, and from many international institutions and organizations through the exchange of expertise and experiences, because transition to democracy, as you all know, is a complex issue and requires steadfastness, continuous work, and the prioritization. Among these priorities, the judicial reform and the provision of legal financial security, because there can be no talk for development without the establishment of justice and the rule of law and security. In the conclusion of my speech, I would like to renew my thanks and my praise to the laudable efforts exerted by your organization by providing the necessary effective mechanisms in the field of judicial training for the benefit of our judges, lawyers, and all the stakeholders in the judicial apparatus. I hope that these programs of cooperation will continue, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, for this very interesting presentation of the development, and also for your warm words of appreciation for the implementers of this program. I would like to continue with introducing the other two members of the panel. On my left here is Mohamed Fadhel Mahfoud, who is the president of the Tunisian Bar Association. And to the extreme left here is Mr. Ghazi Gherairi, who is the Secretary General of the International Academy of Constitutional Law and a highly esteemed professor in international law. I would like to turn the floor over as the next speaker to le bâtonnier, Monsieur Mahfoud.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, dear organizers, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Minister, first of all, I would like to thank you for organizing this meeting in order to make the Tunisian experience known, and also the Tunisian model in democratic transition, which has been admired by many observers in the public and political affairs. And we hope through these meetings and through our meetings with international organizations that we enrich the democratic transition experience, because each one has its own specificities in all the countries that have witnessed democratic transition. To talk about the experience of democratic transition in Tunisia, we have to recall its constituents. These were the revolution of January 14th, 2011, and also the participation of different sectors and different organizations in this revolution. And we can go back a little bit and make sure that these organizations had the historical credibility and historical national credibility, like the Tunisian League for Defense of Human Rights, etc. And these organizations during the difficult days, they were the leading or the pioneering organizations, and they were militating for human rights and basic liberties. And that was at an initial period when Tunisia was under colonizations, and Tunisian lawyers and other organizations and human rights advocates, they militated against colonialism, then against tyranny, and they participated in an effective way to achieve this democratic society that we hope for. But to move on to this society requires this democratic transition, and with all of its problems and crises. And once again, these organizations intervene to become effective in the public arena. Although the traditions of some unions in the world, mainly in Europe and especially, they do not care about public affairs, but in Tunisia they have been participating, and they do that effectively in order to achieve public liberties, personal liberties, for a democratic system where we'll have a balance of powers and human rights, and we also guarantee the independence of the judiciary and anything that will give people their rights. And as I have said earlier on, the experience of democratic transition in Tunisia has gone through some setbacks, and despite the success of the first stage that ended with the election of 2011, and where Tunisian lawyers have participated a great deal, given that our association existed in the High Authority for Elections at the central and regional bodies and also as observers. And after this success in achieving the first elections, free elections, Tunisia has witnessed several difficulties, and the first feature of this setback is the long duration of democratic transition. And those who were governor was supposed to finish their government and move on, but they only did so after pressure from civil society, from the quartet, and also internal pressure and external pressure or international pressure as well. So it was also a unique experience, since we are now talking about political negotiation led by the quartet, and which started from a statement by the National Lawyers Association after the assassination of Mohamed, a member of the National Constituent Assembly, and he was calling for the end of the transitional period. So there was the determination also of the organizations in the national dialogue, which has supported this stand by proposing a roadmap. And thank God, after major difficulties and long meetings and very tough negotiations, this roadmap was achieved, became a reality, and it consisted in major guidelines. First, to end the transitional period, to appoint a government of technocrats, national competent people, and also that the Constitutional Council will finish the transitional period through the laws that have to do with the democratic transition, mainly the High Authority for Elections, the election law, and determining the time for election. And all of this is being now completed. And after a first success of the initiative of the quartet and the civil society determination joining political determination, and here I would like to commend politicians in Tunisia. I think they are mature enough to finish this transitional period and to move on to a period of stability and a democratic system. Yes, of course, we are at the last stage now, and we were committed to elections, and we did that through the Constitutional Council, through the quartet, the national dialogue, and through also the Constitution, which states that elections should be completed by the end of December 2014. And we are doing our best. And I believe that all political forces are called upon to carry out campaigns that will make the programs known, because it's high time for the political forces to take care of economic and social problems, especially after the political controversies and debates. And I think that political and civil society and civil society are working hand in hand, and I think, and also international organization can help us end this period and organize the election in time, and that way we will have achieved the determination of the people through transparent elections. And here I reiterate my I reiterate support for the government support of the High Authority for Elections, not only through technical or logistical support, but we also hope that this High Authority for Elections would have a spirit, and that it will be on the ground and also in the media, like it was the case for the first High Authority of Elections of October 2011. And within this framework, I would like to say that the elections of October 2011 have witnessed some errors, and Tunisian people and political also classes were were tolerant about those errors, and that was the success of it. But in the next election, things will be more difficult. There will be more political concerns, and so I'm calling on that High Authority for Election to see to it, including also international organization, donor organization, etc., because this body needs money. So we hope that that body will be helped to be able to complete these elections. And as opposed to democratic transition in other countries, we hope that we'll have a high percentage of voters, because we are seeking stable governments who are not only legitimate, but and this can only be done through high percentage of participation. And here our organization of lawyers is trying to set up a center to train trainers, and also a center to monitor elections, and a center to sensitize Tunisian citizens so that they will participate effectively in these elections, and to move on once and for all to a stage of stability and a perennious. And I would like to thank you very much for organizing this meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mahfoud, for this very interesting description of the remarkable political process which has kept the transition on track, despite the odds which sometimes didn't seem very favorable, and also for describing the role of independent lawyers in this very important process. Finally, I would like to give the floor to Professor Ghazi Gherairi, and then I would like to open up the floor for questions. But first, Mr. Gherairi, please.
Microphone, please. Microphone. I myself would like to thank the organizers. That's okay, thank you. On my turn, I would like to thank the sponsors and the organizers of this very important issue. And I noticed that the interest in this issue goes beyond the Tunisians enjoying a larger interest, and the choice of this topic and your presence in Tunisia bears evidence for the broadening of interest in what is happening in Tunisia. I've just listened to how the chairman presented this seminar, and I underlined that he was speaking about the Tunisian model in comparison with what is happening in other countries that were characterized to be belonging to the Arab Spring. Before I embark on the Tunisian experience, I would like, from an academic standpoint, to distance myself from the concept of the model or the paradigm. We cannot speak about the paradigm or the model as the experience is still in progress. We would be happy that this experience will end up being a model, but to be a model it has to end successfully and to establish this state of democracy that builds for the peaceful alternation of power. What can be said that Tunisia is still on the track, and that the progress of our daily life is still associated with the main objectives of the revolution. We are all endeavoring to keep Tunisia on this track, but I don't think that we cannot say as of now that Tunisia is already a model. Why do I make this remark? It's a methodological, scientific remark. Because the Tunisian experience, and I'm not here referring to the Ben Ali regime and to the rule of law in Tunisia, but I'd like to look into deeper, with more insight to the Tunisian history, and I would like to go back to the 19th century. Now, running public affairs and political affairs by law dates back to ancient history, and Tunisia in the Arab environment stands as a pioneer country, the first country that adopted the Declaration of Human Rights in the midst of the 19th century. The first Bill of Rights was in this country, and the first constitution in 1861 was in Tunisia, and the first political party in the modern sense of the term was in Tunisia, and the first trade union organizations also were in Tunisia, and therefore so the first spark for the establishment of a democratic state and a state where the rule of law reigns supreme. When we look into the history of this country, it's no surprise, but advocating the rule of law and adopting the constitutions were not enough. We have always been a country that presented a model of the objective contradiction between the legal discourse and the disguised practice of these legal principles. And Tunisia, after the independence in 1956 up to now, Tunisia has been a model for a contradictory discourse between the use of the legal language and the legal background and the non-consecration of this law in the daily life when it comes to citizenship and political liberties. So in a given context, and historically speaking, the revolution is not a request to cut ties with everything, but it is a request to complete the establishment of a democratic state that secures the rule of law and the secure and peaceful transition and alternation of power without any exclusion whatsoever. When we go back to the history of independence days, we notice that the law has played a key role in the establishment of this country, in building the Tunisian society as we know it today. For example, the status of women and women's rights, which these rights are very progressist in in the Arab world, and this is attributed to the Code of Personal Status and to the independence year in 1956. Afterwards, we adopted a legal paradigm that is unprecedented in the Arab world, which is the paradigm of family planning that made the Tunisian structure as it is, the family structure as it is. We have nuclear families, and the population of Tunisia does not exceed 12 million, instead of the 30 million we would have had if we hadn't adopted this family planning, thanks to reliance on this advanced legal paradigm. The problem back then is that the law in social terms was progressist, but in political terms it was backward, and therefore it was crippling the establishment of a genuine citizenship and equality and a genuine balance between the regions. So the revolution of 2011 is a request to continue that, to achieve equality between the regions, to achieve the foundation of citizenship and the achievement of the democratic state. Since 2011, since January 2011, Tunisia entered a very unprecedented status in terms of political sciences. This revolution had no leadership and had no political credo. No one could pretend to have led the Tunisian revolution. It is a leaderless revolution. In political sciences, we are in an unprecedented situation, given that no one could pretend leadership of that revolution. This has made the political class, and here I concur with the Dean when he said that the political revolution came back to its senses, and therefore this political class had to achieve its role and perform its duty. In the first transitional period between the January 2011 and the election times, November 2011, it was a very critical transitional period where it was necessary to reconsider the legislation tapestry in Tunisia to ensure genuine elections. We couldn't hold democratic elections by reference to the political parties law or the electoral laws. All of these laws were bypassing freedom and liberties. So in a consensual way, within the framework of the upper body for the achievement of the goals of revolution, we had to build the legal tapestry for the establishment of the elections. That's how we set up the laws in order to get the elections out of the hands of the Ministry of the Interior, which is in itself already a revolution, because the elections used to be under the in the hands of the Ministry of the Interior, and thereafter we held elections on the proportionate system, which enabled a wide representation of all political trends and the law for the associations that provided for the right for political parties to build association, and also a law for the audiovisual bodies. So the atmosphere was ripe for democratic elections. That's how the elections came in 2011. It wasn't elections designed for the building of parliament, but to set up a commission to draft the constitution. This is also a Tunisian specificity in the Arab world, given that most constitutions in the Arab world are granted constitutions that are drafted by a group of experts appointed by the political leaders, and then we provided to the people on Friday or Sunday and asked them in a referendum to say either yes or no. When we all know the dimension of choice in such referenda in Tunisia in 1956, we drafted our first constitution, and in 2011 Tunisia elected a national constituent assembly to draft its second constitution, and therefore these are purely Tunisian traditions, because the constitutions are drafted by institutions directly elected by the people. The latest constitution that was voted on the 27th of January 2014 is a progressist constitution ahead of the previous constitution, especially the 1956-59, in two ways, without getting to the specifics. The first characteristic is that this constitution was drafted in a consensual and participatory way, more than we could have ever dreamt, and even because we elected 217 MPs in the National Constituent Assembly. They did not draft the constitution as they wanted. As an evidence, the final version of the constitution is far and away from the draft constitutions presented by the political parties. What happened in the meantime? What happened is that there is a great mobilization of the civil society that impacted on critical issues pertaining to the constitution, in establishing a more balanced political system, in guaranteeing full gender parity and equality, in guaranteeing the basic fundamental rights, including those rights pertaining to belief, the right of conscience, and therefore this is the only Arab constitution that stipulates that the freedom of conscience is guaranteed and protected by the constitution, in addition to the establishment of mechanisms to adjust the practice of power, like independent judiciary, independent bodies for the elections, and human rights bodies for the protection of the environment and future generations, but also to set up a constitutional court, because we have never had a constitutional court in the genuine sense of the term, and this constitutional court will stand as one of the key elements in order to balance the political arena and to guarantee the rule of law, or the state that is based on the rule of law, and therefore we can finish this separation between the political discourse and the political practice. So the Constitutional Court as an institution will be the guarantor for the rule of law, in keeping with the Constitution. Now, as we are meeting with legal experts, let's be frank, the political life is not as the laws want this life to be. This life is the result of these new laws, but it is also the result of a deep awareness of the people about the legal rules, and this explains the specificity of Tunisia. There is a widespread awareness and a widespread participation by the mass, and people who went out to the streets. I don't think those who advocated dignity and freedom are going to accept any new form of despotism. This is the only guarantee. This is one of the main guarantees that this experience is poised to shift into a democracy, a sustainable democracy. At least we all endeavor for that, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Gherairi, for putting the ongoing transition in a historical context, and for pointing out that the ongoing transition is indeed ongoing, that we haven't seen the end of that yet. And also for your very interesting description of Tunisia's very special background and special situation in the Arab world. Before I turn the floor over to the audience, I would like to ask a question of a general and fairly political nature. Only 6 months ago, in the early fall of 2013, prospects for a successful transition did not look very good. There had been the second of 2 political assassinations. There was a constitutional deadlock. And then somehow you managed in this country to get the process, the transition, back on track. How was that possible? I think some of you used the sentence in English that the society came back to its senses. But how was that possible? Was that the result of an internal process, or was it the result of external pressure from the quartet, or was it a combination? I think the audience would be very interested in understanding how this deadlock was unlocked? And that's a question to all or anyone of the panel.
In order to continue, it is very important that we put the accident that is what happened in February 2013, and that is the assassination of a political leader, Mr. Shukri Bil'id, and in July 2030, assassination of another political party. And this is something we haven't seen in Tunisia for more than half a century, since the liberation movement. And these two incidents had a major setback for the whole population. For example, the funerals of Mr. Shukri Bil'id, there were thousands of people spontaneously, while those who belong to his ideology or others, that is, we have gone beyond the red lights for the people in general. We couldn't imagine that political life can reach that degree of violence, that is, to kill a political opponent. These two examples, or two witnesses, if you wish, was the foundation for a major change. For example, for the Constitutional Council, which used to write the Constitution, they stopped writing the Constitution and left the Constitution until we left on the civil and non-violent nature of the democratic transition, and the Bardo Square was covered with people, for thousands of people. And when you say that the quartet was actually the result of that people's movement, the union, the buses organization, usually the buses union and the labor unions are working together, and they consider that this is the property of everybody, and they forced the political parties to agree. So this shock also had positive consequences in coming out of the crisis. I agree with Mr. Ghazi Gherairi in everything he said. And actually, in Tunisia, we can talk about what happened before February 6th and after it, that is the assassination of Shukri Bil'id, and also before July 25th and after July 15th. There was a change, not in degree, but in nature, because when the Tunisian population carried out this revolution and were hoping for freedom and etc., were all of a sudden surprised by political assassination. And in Tunisia, thank God, we don't have a tradition of political assassinations. But this danger made the politicians and the people in general wake up and to so it became necessary for all stakeholders to intervene, and that also the political and civil factions wake up, and that we should not get into a violence approach, because if things continue that way, maybe violence would have been even more dangerous. So the political agreements and finishing the transitional period, and to make definitely sure that this transition period would be really a transition, but not a transition that will last for a long time. So awareness of the seriousness of the period, this is what made these agreements possible. And thank God that they all aim at ensuring freedoms, the basic principles, balance between the powers, independence of the judiciary, etc. These are the principles that we all united around. So if we wanted, of course, to have a democratic country. So all people being convinced with this has led to this results. And I agree with Mr. Ghazi Gherairi that sometimes we law people, we say that laws are drafted to be violated. I hope that this text will not be violated, and that the laws emanating from the other elected councils would be in harmony with this constitution and with spirit of the constitution. And we should not just declare our intentions before the revolution. For example, the 1959 constitution was a model constitution, at least at the formal level, but it was violated. And political leadership at that time tried to violate this constitution many times by different laws. So I hope that the next stage after this awareness, we hope that we consider Tunisia, that Tunisia is now crossing to finally to these principles. Maybe just to add through a question, maybe. When things got tough, starting the second assassination of the late Brahmi, the question was whether we should have a political government that included the representatives of the different parties in a coalition, or whether we should a government of just competences. And the question, in my opinion, and this, of course, was due to the country being strangled economically after the elections. So to resort to a government of competent technocrats who have no political belongings may be explained by the economic situation, the bad economic situation, in addition to the political crisis that was mentioned by my colleagues. And thank you.
Thank you very much for these very interesting answers. And with that, I would like to turn the floor over to the audience for any questions that you may have. Could you please introduce yourself as you ask your question?
My name is Kadim Lami, individual member of ILAC and Counselor of International Bar Association. سأتكلم بالعربي أحسن.
I will speak in Arabic better. I'd like to thank the experts in the panel, His Excellency the Minister, the Dean, the Chairman of the Bar Association, and Mr. Ghazi Gherairi. I've enjoyed very much the lectures presented, but I have a question. I studied all the Arab constitutions, but there's a terminology referred to by Professor Ghazi, which is the freedom of conscience. Can he dwell on that with more details on the freedom of conscience? Shall we answer one question, or shall we wait for a set of questions? I'll be very happy to go either way. With regard to the freedom of conscience, what we find in most Arab constitutions, even in the Tunisian previous constitution, we find that there are articles that guarantee the freedom of belief. What is now in the constitution is the freedom of belief. That is the belief, the freedom of belief. That is to have a certain worship. The freedom of conscience is added to the freedom of belief, and this is not something we have come up with. It's in the international covenants, in the two international covenants, in the International Covenant of Political and Civil Rights of 1966, and that this is a freedom that is a freedom given to the individual to believe or not to believe, the freedom to change their worship or their religion, because with the interaction of certain worships, there is no possibility to change one's belief, because it is not related to the religious expression. It could sometimes take a philosophical configuration, or what is called in some countries the status of skepticism in belief, which is translated in Arabic the don't knows, and that all evolves around the freedom of belief. And the freedom of conscience covers more the intellectual variations, and unlike the freedom of belief, which is found even in the previous Tunisian constitution. This is a further guarantee for all intellectual and beliefs that are adopted in the international charters of human rights, like the International Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenants of the Civil and Political Rights of 1966.
Thank you very much. Any more questions from the floor, from the audience?
Good afternoon. I'm William Meyer. I'm the chair of ILAC. And again, I want to thank the panel for the wonderful discussion and explanations. A question that I have is based on some experiences I've had in Tunisia prior to the revolution, and that was interacting with young people. The young people here in Tunisia prior to the revolution were angry. They seemed very discontented. And I guess a question that I have is, at least from your perception, how are the young feeling about the revolution now after 3 years? Are they disillusioned, or do they think the revolution has moved in a direction that they would favor?
I believe that the Tunisian revolution came for the sake of freedom, dignity, employment, and regional balances and regional development, and probably asking for a new developmental paradigm that would cut away with marginalization and exclusion that has been in force before the revolution. But all of these objectives have not been translated on the ground of reality, and the Tunisian youth are still yearning for the implementation, for this representation and implementation. But this has been faced with some impediments, the first of which is the repercussions of this transition to democracy, and the second obstacle was that the ruling class was not aware about achieving this transitional justice, and the third impediment, which is more dangerous, which is most dangerous, because we cannot imagine a democratic system in hunger and marginalization. The stifling economic crisis that has rigged the country after the revolution could lead to a sense of insecurity among the Tunisian youth. But what is worth noting is that the Tunisian youth, despite all of these challenges and all of these setbacks, I think the Tunisian youth remain confident. They are optimists, and they trust the institutions, they trust the civil society, even if that trust has been undermined with regard to the political class. But they still have trust in the four organizations that have historic credibility, and this historic credibility led to the fact that the Tunisian youth trust these organizations, and I think that the leadership of these institutions was not designed for restricted and limited political goals, but for the interest of the country. This is what created this sense of trust and optimism for a better future.
I just wanted to say that the youth enjoys the freedom of assembly, organization, and expression, and what is expected that young people will continue to protest, and this is what we see. Many young people asking for jobs, for improving their situation, but now there is some responsibility because they are now organized, and I do not expect young people to give up his natural ambition, given that every young person hopes for the best, and they know that their future is in their hands. And thank you. I wanted to add some remark, but the minister gave the essential. This is natural, and I would not want our young people to be satisfied with everything. And even before the revolution, even during despotism, the university was a place where the government oppression was refused. I would just say that civil society and the media should allow young people to express their dissatisfaction in a political way. That is not to refuse the election, because we noted from the last election, and we saw that their participation was less than expected, so they could not. They refuse the institution, but they do not participate in changing it. So we would like these young people to play their role, to refuse the solution, but they do that through efficient political means, that is by participate in election, especially that they are numerous in Tunisia and they have an impact on elections.
Thank you all very much. I think we have more questions. One and two. Why don't we ask, we'll take 3 questions now. We have a deadline by 3:30. So we take 3, Nina Lahoud, Peter Maynard, and Juan Benassar. Okay.
Thank you very much for those inspiring and frank words. I have a couple quick questions. The professor mentioned that the revolution gave rise to a political tapestry, a legal tapestry framework that made the elections right to happen, including the promulgation of certain laws. And you went on to say that the constitutional process was one of the most participatory and inclusive that could be and ensured gender equality. So you described the new life as one of awareness among the masses of civil society and momentum. I wanted to ask, in this framework, what do you think were the most important factors that enabled or fostered this awareness throughout civil society? And do you think, or I shouldn't ask a leading question, what do you attribute the guarantees of this very robust gender equality in your Constitution? Do you think it was attributable to the women, to the youth, or to what elements? Thank you.
The questions are important and rich one, but I'll try to be brief given the time pressure. For me, the participative approach, the open approach, I think is from the very beginning of the revolution, before the constitution, even the law were stated in the High Commission for the achieving the revolution objectives. They were not elected, but they were representative of different parties, etc., and different faction of society, and it was that body who has set up all of those laws, who are usually very progressive. For example, the election law, which imposed parity between men and women, which we didn't have before. And all of these laws were not voted for by majority, but they were obtained by consensus. And this shows how people were able to build consensus. Why is this possible in Tunisia? I think this is due to many reasons, some of which I have mentioned. That is the awareness of citizenship and political participation was existed before. I talked about the movement in the 20s on a civil movement against colonialism. We didn't really had a war, but we had mainly political pressure against the colonialism. And then also we had the first government which has gave birth to a high level of in eradicating illiteracy. There were schools everywhere, obligatory free schooling, and so that now we have a society which can participate in association. We can impact media. This revolution, of course, there was also Facebook and Twitter and different bloggers who played an important role. All of this made the transition not carried out by politicians only, but by citizens, and politicians were only part of the equation. The women in Tunisia, as I said, there was the Code of Personal Statute of 1956, but that didn't come out like that out of the blue sky. There were bases and traditions for a balance of Islam. We were already talking about in the 11th century. There was a possibility for women to put as a condition to her husband that he would not take a second or a third wife, and this is in the Middle Ages. In addition to intellectuals that have laid the foundation for a balanced Islam, and then the politicians came to consecrate that, but it was a social and intellectual activity.
Any other of the eminent panelists that want to comment on Nina Lahoud's question?
Excuse me.
I was asking if there is any other of the eminent panelists who want to comment on Nina Lahoud's question. If not, we'll give the floor to Peter Maynard.
Peter Maynard, member of ILAC and also the IBA. We bring you greetings from the Bahamas and the Caribbean and many places which wish every success for the transition. The The question of public education was mentioned to make elections more meaningful, participation in elections more meaningful. We have organizations such as ILAC and its partners, which help to train the judges. What do you see as the public education process consisting of, and what external help, if any, would you need?
Peter, are you directing your question to anybody in particular, or any panelist? Okay.
The education level, if I understood the question right, the educational level in Tunisia is a very high level, thanks to generations on that have gone to school, and we have skills in all fields and specialties. Of course, this educational awareness creates civil sense and political awareness, and Professor Ghazi Gherairi referred to that. The Tunisian university at a given time was the scene for struggle against dictatorship, because the political life by and large was kind of locked. And we can add to that that the Tunisian university has given rise to skilled competencies in the political field, and even at the level of civil society. We've witnessed that after the revolution, because after the revolution we needed these competencies and skills, which we found in the body that is forgotten, which is the upper body for the achievement of political objectives and transition to democracy. In this body we found the skills that enabled us to achieve the first transition to democracy. And I hope that the members of this body will be rehabilitated in the next months for the laudable efforts they have exerted. The second the other skills we found in the lawyering profession and in the university professors, in high school teachers, in the judiciary, and it helped with democratic transition in all fields, be it in the laws and decrees that were promulgated back then, or in terms of preparing for the elections, or in the effective participation in the holding of the elections. Therefore, it almost seemed obvious that the skills were there. What was lacking was the political will. And after the revolution, the political will came in order to achieve what is hoped, that is to make this transition and to meet these objectives. Thank you. I hope I have answered the question. I can add to what because you are referring to the public educational system and with regard to the public schools in elementary, high school, or in the university, these schools are the ones that gave the society we have in Tunisia, especially in terms of equal rights to education and equal rights between boys and girls, and that is essential because it led to the experts and skills we see at the civil service level in many sectors. But let's not forget, His Excellency the Minister reminded us of the financial crisis, and now the school that we have today. To what extent do we have the necessary resources to ensure that we that this public school system shall continue? These are the solutions that we are envisaging in order to address the economic problems. This question is very important. It's about the strategic development of this society.
Thank you very much. And then for the last question from Mr. Juan Benazar.
Good afternoon. My name is Juan Ben Nazar. I represent the Inter-American Bar Association, and I am a practicing lawyer in San Juan, Puerto Rico. My question is to the Honorable Minister of Justice. In your remarks, you made a comment connecting the rule of law in a democratic society with economic development. How important is it for you, that relationship between the rule of law and the pursuit of economic development in your country?
Thank you. To show the interaction between on what is called the reciprocal exchange, the rule of law ensures security. That is, if you follow the law, and if the law is the last resort in litigation and disputes, this means that people have there is then real trust in investment and development, and these will be provided. That's why I said that any time you have the rule of law and everybody is under the law and they are equal before the law, and every time we are committed to the rulings emanating from courts, all of this provides an atmosphere of trust, since the law emanates from the people's determination. This provides then a trust and a democratic environment which is good for for businessmen and all of those who would like to participate in the development efforts of our country.
Thank you very much. And with that, we have reached the end of our first panel. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Minister, Monsieur Le Bâtonnier, and Mr. Professor Gherairi, for your very interesting overview of the very particular situation that Tunisia finds itself in today. I think we've been very fortunate to be able to have the perspectives from both the official point of view, from the academic point of view, and from the point of the independent legal profession. At least I have come away from this very encouraged, and I will do what I can to make ILAC continue in its work to support the transition, so that, as in Mr. Gherairi's words, this is not a finalized concept. This is something ongoing, and we need to work, we want to work together. Thank you very much. And as a small token of our appreciation, we have, and since we're based in Sweden, ILAC is based in Sweden, we have a Swedish symbol, a wooden horse from the province of Dalecarlia that we would like to present to you. Thank you so much.